Hi everybody, this is Shannon, CEO and founder of FILMFave. I am so excited that you are here with us today. We are interviewing Elizabeth Caddy, a very accomplished costume designer for theater and film. And I know we're going to have a lot of great questions for her. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, because we're about to have some fun. Cue that intro. Awesome! Yay! How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. I'm so glad to be here talking about movies.
Yay! Me too. I know. I can't wait. Right? Especially costume. You know, as a little girl, I used to love just wearing princess outfits, and everybody who knows me now would be like, "Yeah, whatever, Sharon, whatever." But I used to dress up all the time, and I would make stuff out of my Barbie dolls. Even my daughter does that now. She's 16, and she's making costumes for her Barbie dolls and stuff. It's really kind of cool.
Oh, that's great. I have an 8-year-old, and we make clothes for her American Girl doll. Well, the version of that we have in Barbie and all that stuff too.
Oh, that's so exciting! Yay! So speaking of children, you have 2 children, right? 8.
I do.
What was the other one?
11. So I have a son named Wilson who is 11, and yes, he was named after the volleyball. And I have a daughter named Pearl who's 8.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so tell me, what's it like balancing home life? Because I have 2 children too, and I'm also a filmmaker, so I know how that is. How is it balancing? Are you able to do that and feel comfortable about it? Or
are we able to do it? No, but no. I think, it's all they've ever known. So that's part of it too. So, yes. But they definitely can fuss sometimes because it's cyclical. So there'll be a period of lower levels of work. And then you sort of do with like the deadline sprint of like those 2 weeks where you lead up to a deadline where it's like, here's some crackers, kids, like good luck.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's great because there's a flexibility in those lighter times to volunteer at their school and, do all that other stuff. So they know that there's kind of pluses and minuses. They don't love it when I have to travel, but they're getting a little bit older. So.
Yeah. My kids are like that too. So I'm sure there's pasta in the cabinet, kids. That's a little busy today, but they get it and it's fun. Do you include your kids in when you're designing and coming up with costume ideas and stuff like that?
That's definitely fun. As much as I can. And my daughter especially is interested in when I'm working on something, or especially in horror, you're distressing things intentionally. Yeah. She loves to come out and participate and just like get a feel for all. She says when she gets older, she's going to work with me. So I would love that.
Oh, that's so great. I love that. I wish my kids would want to. My daughter's like, I don't want to be seen with you, Mom.
Oh no, any day now. I'm waiting for it. I'll relish these moments.
I know, right? Because there will come a day where they're like, okay, just leave me alone. Just leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. But Tethered, so you just wrapped on Tethered, right? Can you tell me a little bit about what you did for Tethered and how was that experience?
So Tethered was a super interesting, it is horror, and I have been told very clearly not to give anything away about the plot, but I'm going to say that I watch too much horror, a good, bad, medium, slow, all these different things. And it's just a really fresh idea that I, even reading the script the first time was like, oh, this could be something unique and really cool. And we shot it here in North Carolina in Thomasville.
Yeah.
On like the coldest 2 weeks of the year. And obviously because of like COVID stuff, we were outside almost all the time. And a lot of the scenes were outside, and it was just freezing, but also wonderful because we got to work with some really talented actors, and I was off camera several times, just like, okay, like I'd seen this take 5 times and they're still just, taking it to that place. I was like, wow, this is going to be something really cool.
Are you on set with them too? So if anything like wardrobe mishaps or anything happened, you're there in a second?
Definitely.
Do you have any stories like that's ever happened? Or
oh yeah, part of it's being a wardrobe supervisor, being on set often, it's sort of a mix of actual talented craftsperson and like school nurse. So I have like Tylenol and like feminine products and, like a heating pad. And, you just there is a little bit of element of like, you kind of look out for them and help with that stuff. So a lot of times they will want you to be on a monitor and watch and make sure that like the collar's not flipped and things sort of look consistent over time. But when we did Backward Creep, I showed up and, you know, we're the crew's there and we're doing our thing and pulling out all the pieces, going over them with the executive producer. And I'm like, okay, so you have like pants for this character because I have this on my list. And she's like, no, we needed pants to match. And out of this like brocade fabric, and it's very fancy, like vampire look. So I made a pair of pants out of that, you know, extra fabric that I brought with me just in case, just in like an hour before our talent got there. And off we go, because I bring my machine with me too, just in case.
You have to, right? Or ever like on the spot, and to be lucky enough or to think ahead of that, to know that I'm going to need enough fabric in case I have to sew a pair of pants later. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah. I have like the sewing machine, my iron, like a little mini shop comes with me, and I set it all up and all the pieces, you know, so all the pieces have to get checked in and out at the end of the day. Stuff that touches the actor, I will bring home and wash. So it's fresh for them.
With the COVID situation that's been going on, have you had to work differently, especially since you're dealing with clothing and stuff like that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, it's really just, even in my personal studio, it's not huge. So it's really saying like, no one can come with you when you come to your fittings and stuff. I wear a mask, they wear a mask, I wear gloves and switch them out all the time. And just, you know, there's a lot of testing, but so, you know, you mitigate as much as you can, but also know that you're, you know, in that situation. So there's a little digital waiver that my clients have to say, you know, click, and that's all we can do is, you know, do our best.
But what is something you're really, really proud of?
Let's see. So last March, so one of the other things I love to do is my like life skill or whatever is sewing. And so I can't donate $1 million somewhere, or I'm not a nurse who can volunteer, but I can help people with a needle and thread and I go to Comic-Cons and I serve as like a repair person. So
that's the coolest idea.
So I hook up with the con, and so they make sure like no one else is doing the same thing, and so that I get permission from them, and I can just kind of wander around, and it's wonderful. And I and I don't charge anybody. It's sort of like included in their ticket price essentially, and it's wonderful. And I meet just such awesome people. So I make all the stuff that I wear to those. You know, obviously, if I'm going to encourage other people to buy my stuff, I should be wearing it too. And I made this, I called it like a steampunk seamstress. And so last 2 Marches ago now, I wore it, and it's like a gown, but I wore it with these like pants kind of underneath that ended up. So that's on my Instagram from last March. And that's one of my favorites, even though it was something I wore.
Like I see you have experience in working with like busy patterns, and how do you, especially being on the fly like that, being able to match up and make sure it looks okay to go on set? Have you had any kind of experiences where something was really tricky and hard and you were able to pull it off in the end? Or
it's always, you know, this combination of prepare every single thing you can in advance, and then, you know, there's always decisions you have to make like that day in that moment where you go, no, you know, or just like pulling off a scarf off somebody as they're walking away, or like, wait, hold on, I got to roll your pants up just a little bit. Or, so that's, I did a Robin Hood a couple summers ago, and I sewed every single thing everybody wore.
Wow.
And it was this wild, fun, medieval type thing. And our King George, I believe he was George in that one, had this outfit, and the first version I made of it was just it just looked awful and ridiculous. And we were almost at dress. So I had to like rework that whole thing. And another time I did The Wizard of Oz, and our poor Tin Man, like I had made this cage thing with this foam on the, I was like, oh, this is great. And then I put them in it to kind of see if it would fit, and we couldn't get them out. And it was, I was panicking, but eventually she was able to sort of like basically dislocate a shoulder and shimmy out. And I was like, okay, we can't use this. So to circle back to one thing I am really proud of. So I do some cosplays. So Beetlejuice is a very rich, deep well to pull from. Yes. So I decided to do the table. Like I cosplayed as the table with the model city on it. So
Yeah.
I built myself like a little table and all these like layered, I have a Cricut, like
Yeah.
layered houses and cars from the movie that like stuck up so I could just
No
wear
way.
it and walk around. And I wore the black and white check, like,
Yeah.
and that was really fun and just sort of an odd, like, I was like, oh, it's weird. Let's do that. Yeah. And so right on this, the wrong side,
Oh,
this side is a Garfield like duster that I made. Somebody gave me like a vintage sheet. And so
yeah.
I like cut it all up and put the stripes in those spots and made myself this. I haven't found a place to wear it yet because it is a bed sheet, but it's so cool and I just love to look at it.
That is amazing. I love it. I used to have Garfield sheets like that too. That's exciting.
I love that old Garfield stuff. Like my like thrift find of the year would be the Garfield phone.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would get a landline just so I could use it.
I'm going to give you some of my vintage Star Wars sheets that are worth quite a lot. I'd love to have like a little shirt or a jacket out of that. That would be pretty killer.
I mean, I can make anything.
I could tell that you're so very talented. Like I've seen all the cosplay stuff that you've done. And then, oh, it's just so cool. Like you even made like this little wallet to kind of go with your outfit, I think. This is what I've seen.
Yep. To put my cards in.
Yeah, that's so, I mean, like you just create everything.
I had more time.
I know, right? So let's talk about the backward creep. Let's talk a little about that one. I haven't seen that one. Can you tell me a little about this and what your role in it was?
So Backward Creep was, I mean, that project was something else. It was really cool. It shot nights, so that was its own level of exhaustion.
Yeah.
And it was summer, so we'd get there as crew at like 6. It would be cameras up at like 9, and then you shoot till the sun till the light changes, and it was wild. Christopher Moore is the writer and director, and Amanda Stone also did some writing on that. And that was a short, and as is my understanding, it was picked up for a feature, and so we're going to be doing that. And they asked me to come back for that, which is great.
Congratulations. That's so awesome to hear. That's so awesome. Do you work primarily in horror films? Do you really like it? Is there a difference kind of with that, or?
I think I'm also a big Last Podcast on the Left fan.
Our
horror fans, make installations to all my Last Podcast friends. I think, and I know they talk about this, there's something very sweet and gentle about people who love horror, which is like backwards to some people, but it's like there is something unique and just caring and open and helpful that is just sort of woven into that like culture that isn't in other places.
Right.
So I'd say that's just from the jump, just different.
I completely agree. Even when we go to like the horror festivals, I don't know, you immediately, when you think of horror, you immediately think that the people that would be surrounding that industry would be into murder and killing and death and blood and blah blah blah, but that's not necessarily true. They're into the art form of it. Yes, they're into the art form. But they're the kindest, most loving, wonderful people I have ever met. They're very friendly, gentle, and they can play villains like you wouldn't believe. My husband is probably the most kind and generous man, but he plays villains in a lot of films, and he's able to pull that off too. So.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in doing costume for horror that you have found as like, I mean, it's like everyday clothes a lot of times, but is there maybe this question is better. Is there an interpretation, a different type of story that you need to tell through clothing when it comes to horror?
Well, first hurdle is convincing production that they need to have a costume person.
Yeah.
Because it's so overlooked in horror. They're just like, oh, just bring whatever. And it's like, no, you have an opportunity to communicate a lot to your viewers and push and pull on their comfort by what they're seeing these other people wear and how it's fitting them or not fitting them or how old it is and where to hide Easter eggs and all these different things that we bring to the table that, and I think you'll see that reflected in the fact that at a lot of horror film festivals, there isn't a costume category even.
Yeah.
So,
I know. That's very exciting.
I've written a couple of emails about it. I was like, I'm coming to your film festival and I noticed there's no costuming category. And I'm just, encourage you in the future to consider that, like, these are all the things that we do for a film. And,
Good for you. That's really good because we need to be celebrating. There's a lot of unsung heroes. Can I say that? An unsung hero, and definitely wardrobe is one of them. I mean, not just the on the spot changes and the things you have to come up with out of nowhere in a second, but let's also talk about like villains who have to have their own character appearance and only in their costume and stuff like that. Do you work on like more of a like latex costume type work for the villain or anything like that, or do you do kind of like the cape wardrobes and the clothing around building a good villain through that story? Or
Yeah, I always try to make good friends with whoever the SFX person is right
yeah,
off the bat. How can I support your look? What do
yeah,
you need? In Backward Creep, there was all kinds of like tubes and everything, and our villain looked like she was wearing a dress, but it was really two pieces so that they could get in there and do what they needed to do. So coordinating with them from the jump, like that's step one,
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so you probably have to have like a really good handshake deal and say, okay, where is this going to go? And are you in the makeup room with them and trying to make sure that it fits appropriately and that you know where everything goes? Or
Ideally.
yeah, so
I mean, and that really depends on the tone that gets set by production, or some SFX people would prefer, hey, give me time to do this and then we'll come out and show you and then we can go from there. So I just really try to support this vision that this director is trying to do, and the best way to do that is to coordinate with these
right.
other people for sure.
Have you ever done period pieces? I know that that is very difficult to do too. So, how have you gone with that? I heard you said steampunk before. So, have you done anything real period like, and how was that?
I did Robin Hood a couple years ago, so that's probably as close as you're gonna kind of get into the pegged to a certain time period. A lot of linen, but I mean, it's all just it's a puzzle, but I get to make all the pieces.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I can build it any way. So, getting a good communication with the director, because all we have for they have an idea, literally like an image in their brain, and they're trying to use like clunky English words, to communicate a vision and a mood and a feeling. So
yeah,
really encouraging them to be like, give me what are you listening to right now? Like, send me your Spotify, give me all your like images. What are you like what's seeping in there? And I put that all up on the inside of my studio and like really try to like figure out what this person is trying to say and really
right.
support that in like a bed of nails, like a million little things that stick up to support this huge image they're trying to build.
What an awesome way to start too. So you kind of build like a mood board in your studio, and you really immerse yourself in the story before the story even begins. So
Mm-hmm.
that's I applaud that. That's so. This is so incredible. It's funny because you don't really realize how much wardrobe and costumes really. I mean, you get an idea of how big of a role they play, but it's almost like music. If you have no music, you're not going to have a good story. You can tell a whole different story with music and editing and everything, but you can do that with costuming too. I could really change the tone of something if it's not correct or in the period or in the right even fabric, that, like you said, linen, for example. If you started to choose something like cotton or canvas, even, I can imagine that would tell a totally different story for the director. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing. So how did you get into this? How did you get started?
Well, my grandparents took care of me when I was a kid, and my grandmother taught me to sew, and she was like, she was a depression survivor, and she said, I'm going to teach you to sew, and no matter what's going on in the economy, you can do it, and when you're too old to do it, you can teach it. And I
Oh,
mean, and she taught me how to do that, and she had many other grandchildren, and I'm sure she said that to them too, and maybe it didn't stick, but I love it. So about 10 years ago, I was like, I want to do something like professionally with the sewing. I definitely can't work at like a traditional job. Um, so I got to make this work because this is like, I know this is where my skill set is. Um, so I decided to do customs only. I was like, I don't want to end up with an Etsy shop and a bunch of merchandise. I got to guess what people want. Like that
oh,
didn't, I was like, what if I end up with stock I can't sell? Like,
yeah.
I was like, I can't go down that road, or maybe someday, but I was like, I'll do customs for a little while and see. if I can, make any money or get clients. And that was like 10 years ago, and lucky that I continue, like every time I start to be like, oh man, do I have any jobs coming up? Like I'm lucky to say that I do. And
oh, that's exciting. That's really exciting. If you could go back to your 10-year-old self and tell yourself anything about your career and where you are now, what would you tell yourself for other people who want to get involved into costume design?
I would say a couple things. I would say I went to a community college for counseling. Do stuff like go seek out extra education when it comes to communication, expectation management, being able to take critique without getting like upset, which as an artist, that's hard, you know, like, and being really comfortable and hearing what they're telling you about the changes that they like, and not like reacting to, are they rejecting my idea or my drawing, or, and just getting really comfortable with communication and getting really comfortable talking about money. That is such a huge deal. And even people I know, peers of mine who are getting into custom anything, that's saying, and I have a contract. I was so lucky that after the first few years of sort of struggling, a friend of mine who is a professional artist gave me a copy of their contract that they use for all their customs, that they like paid a lawyer to draft, and just out of the kindness, artist to artist, said here.
That's awesome.
So I use that. I've added a couple things that are specific to sewing, like if you don't come to your fittings, your deadline might get changed. But just that kind of stuff that I that's where I would say, because you're gonna make time to do the sewing that you love. You might not make time to really get those other skills that are going to support the fact that it is a business and that you need to like be productive and all that good stuff. Oh, and I'd say also anything that you're avoiding, when, like for me a long time ago, like 8 years ago, it was zippers. And I would always save them for last. And I would always maybe even seek out patterns that didn't have zippers. And then I was just like, no, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this. And I took like an entire Saturday, like a couple of them in a row, and just did zippers all day. Well, and it's just like, you have to turn around and just walk straight into the skill you're avoiding or that you don't want to do. Like you have to.
That's a really good way to look at any kind of struggle you're going with. Just carve out time for it and just really beat it up until you got it down. And thank you. That's really, really good advice. I definitely could take that on.
Well, right now it's because part of the process is that I always try to send sketches, and so I did them by hand for a long time, and so doing 3 examples slightly different, really drawing them out was just taking forever. I was like, okay, I got an iPad, I got the pencil, and I'm not great at it, so I force myself a couple times a month to watch like the YouTube how to draw a galaxy or something and just follow along. And like, they look terrible, but I got to force myself all the time to do the thing that I don't really love doing.
We always ask this with everybody that comes on. It seems to be the hardest question that we ask, but is there any movie for costume design that you can say is your absolute film fave?
Yes, The Fifth Element.
Oh, you knew right away. Oh, and that's a good one too. That is a really, really good one. Wow.
Yes. One of my goals, like my long-term goals, is like I want to dress a world. Like I want to decide what everybody in this fictional world wears and how they all get along. And I think The Fifth Element just showed this like really dense slice of this structure of this society that they had, from like the richer people who lived in outer space. And I mean, it was just like page after page essentially of these really well thought out, and how the colors interacted with each other. And like that really, I was like, ooh, because like I said, I knew I really wanted to do sewing, and I watched a lot of Project Runway, and people would say, oh, you should go on. I'm like, I don't want to guess what people want. Like, I don't want to say, here are 12 things you should want. I don't have that to say. Some people have that to say and I don't. So just trying to, but I remember doing that. I remember one of those moments on Backward Creep where it's late and we're working, and you just have those, because there's something special about being on a live set. First of all, there's like just something special about that, just being like, oh, this is my lane. Oh, like there's these moments where you're like, oh, okay, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, this has been super exciting. Is there anything you'd love to share with us or anything? Or
I will say that in a lot of projects, I'm the only woman who's there, and I'm 4'12", 5 feet tall on a good day, you know.
Yeah.
So
12.
a little tiny person. So it's me and a bunch of, 6 foot tall black t-shirts.
Yeah.
On set. So, and that's not always the case, but it
Yeah.
is a lot of the time. And so, there were times where I was the only female department head, and it felt wonderful to tell my daughter, hey, this is what your mom is doing.
Yeah.
And I recently won best costume design for Backward Creep, which was awesome because again, there aren't a ton of costume categories, so it's fantastic. And to have won that, to tell her that like this isn't a space where we had the most say or we were getting the position of like people listen. I was telling her, I was like, it doesn't feel terrible to say hold and like 20 giant dudes have to be like, yes, and like there's this respect. And again, I think that being on a horror set specifically, like those guys, again, to stereotype a big group of people, are like, I felt so looked out for. I did not feel like any type, I don't know. I very much felt like this support and this, oh, she's got something to say, let's listen. Not like, no, we'll deal with you later. And I have a lot of respect for that. And,
I'm glad that you brought that up. Do you feel like being a female, so like in the film industry, there's probably about 17% of women in the film industry, and it is slowly growing up there, and excluding actors like crew and stuff like that. Do you feel like you have to speak louder to be heard, or do you ever feel like as a woman that you need to just to project a little bit louder as far as like getting people to listen to you and to work with you more? Do you feel a struggle of being a woman in the filmmaking industry?
I don't know that it's like a conscious feeling of like swimming against a tide, but I do know that there are times where I have a fantastic, super progressive sister who lives in DC. She works for Amnesty International, and she's sort of like the fantastic feminist aunt for my daughter. And I was telling her, I was like, hey, I'm going to start this movie. I was like, oh, I thought about baking something for it. She was like, no. She's like, a guy wouldn't do that. He wouldn't think maybe I should bake some cookies for them. She's like, don't start yourself in this dynamic of like, and stuff that,
wow, that's a good,
just trying to be conscientious of the dynamic I'm setting up from the get-go.
Yeah. That's good advice too, because if you walk on set a certain way, you set that tone of voice of how you're going to work. And that goes true with everything, right? So that's really good advice. Sound like you've been doing this a very, very long time.
I spent I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I moved down here when I graduated high school in 2001. So I came down here to go to UNCG for the theater department because I had been into acting all through that like high school, but still sewing and making stuff and mutilating so many clothes. Oh my gosh. I was like, oh yeah, I can totally add this to, and just like ruined a ton of things, but it's how you learn. And so as part of the curriculum, you have to cycle through all the different, so you have to do tech for one of those shows. You have to do everything, and which includes a rotation in the costume shop. And I remember doing that, being like, oh, this is really cool. And I really like the project oriented part of it, where you start something, you work on it for a while, it's up on its legs and it goes, and then you do something else. Like I don't know that I would love, like I have a friend who works on Hamilton on Broadway, and it's a lot of repetition, and it's an amazing show, but I don't know that I would I don't know that I would thrive in those conditions long term. And there's something really special about seeing an actor and giving them the thing that you made and watching them put it on and like be different because they're wearing this thing that you like. And especially some of them are able to articulate it, and they'll say like, I feel something, like I feel more in this, and they'll walk differently. And those are those really cool like moments of you're tangibly like, oh, this is something special. And the flip side of that is my day-to-day clients who are bringing their bridesmaid's dress or their workwear or these other clothes that so what I do actually is I hide the mirror in the studio. So I have them get changed into the thing that they're getting altered, and then I pin it how it's going to be. Then I let them see the mirror and we talk about it. Like my one of the things I love about this job is that I get to help people like love their body. And I always tell them, like, we're bringing this to you, not the other way around. Like,
Yeah.
we are bringing the clothes to where you are, or this costume, especially if it's a custom. I mean, you can make anything. And so I love that. I had an uncle growing up who had a hair salon, and he said, I want everybody to leave here absolutely convinced they're my favorite client. And like, I really feel like that. Like, I want everyone to just like float out of here feeling beautiful or strong or like handsome or whatever it is. Like, that's what I want to give them. So there's two people I want to mention.
Yes.
Okay, so one of them, a woman named Brittany Brock, and she made a short that I saw at Women in Horror called Broadside.
Broadside. Okay.
A bunch of awards there, and I'm pretty sure it won some more. But she's got something to say.
Okay.
And just the way she framed, like, it was a short, but I would have happily watched a feature. And I follow her social, and I'm very excited to see like what her future holds for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, that's really good. Did you say you had another one too?
Yeah, so Brooke from 1981 Pictures is making a couple. I think there's one that's it's in pre-production that's going to start shooting, I think, this month. And another one that she's going to do. And she does a lot of like vintage kind of 80s stuff and just her general aesthetic is fantastic. So got to mention these other ladies who I watch and go, wow, that's really cool. I hope they want to work with me someday.
Well, I didn't want to keep you for too much longer, but I'm so excited to have met you. You're very, very talented. I love, love, love your work, and to win these awards and to just keep going on into the world like this. And I really hope that someone gives you a world to design, because I know it'll be your oyster. Can I say that? Does that work?
I have a daughter named Pearl, so I'd say that's good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cute. Oh, that's so cute. So I just hearing you and how you talk about telling a story through clothes and that you want to build a whole world, to me, that really resonates with me. And that's somebody I would want on my film, that I could trust and take care of that. So I appreciate getting to know you. So
oh, thank you. And I think, the real part of that is being like, I'm a tool in the toolbox. You know what I mean? Like, for the director, or a paintbrush in the box for the director to use. Like, it really is a supporting of their vision. It's not like, well, this is my opportunity to do this thing that I want to do. Like, I mean, there is some of that, but like, it really needs to be about supporting this vision. And that just like, that has to be the priority. And that's how you're going to get like the best thing. Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear another woman say such kind things. And it just really means a lot. And I really appreciate that.
So thank you again. This was awesome, Elizabeth. I can't even begin to tell you how fun this has been. I really have a new appreciation for wardrobe and costuming thanks to you. So if you love women in horror or horror movies or costume design, then make it your film fave. See you again, guys. See you next week, and we'll join you on filmfave.com. Like, is there anything that you can't do? Because
I can't knit.
You can't knit,
or like crochet. I can just knot things, even cords, like headphone cords. It's like a gift that it's just, I'm gonna pick it up and it's gonna be all tangled. So